Hello, everyone. My name is Jason Solaris, Product Marketing Manager at Varicent, and I'm excited to welcome you to this conversation series that discusses how the use of artificial intelligence, or AI, can help organizations improve their revenue growth potential. So today I'm joined by two leading experts in the field of AI. I have Martin Fleming, research economist at the MIT-IBM Watson AI lab, author, fellow at the University of Manchester, and the chief revenue scientist at Varicent. And also have Joel Shapiro, professor at the Kellogg School of Management at Northwestern University, and the chief analytic officer at Varicent. So in the first video of this series, we discussed how different types of AI can address different business problems. Generative AI can help with sales productivity challenges, and maybe decision support is better suited for more predictive AI. So the potential of AI is real. With the right data, the right people, the right technology, organizations can use AI today to drive and accelerate increased revenue attainment and growth. But what are those sales performance management specific use cases? And with all the potential applications of AI, where do you even start? So Martin and Joel, I have no doubt that through your research and experience, you've come across more than one sales organization that finds the idea of actually applying AI a fairly daunting task. So I'll start with you, Martin. What advice can you give those folks?
Well, if we think about the sales management process, we can really think about three major areas of focus. The first is around segmentation and account fit and account potential. The accounts, if you will, the customers. Start with a focus on the customers, segmentation and account potential. Secondly, around territories and quota. How a territory is going to be structured, how a quota is going to be estimated and aligned. And then thirdly, pipeline and customer management. In all three of these areas, artificial intelligence and machine learning tools have a significant role to play. And we're going to find as we go forward in the next few years, increasingly, these applications will appear and improve the ability to manage the sales process and manage sellers and their activities. A lot of the early activity, certainly in our organization, is around territories and quota management. Being able to understand optimal territories, understanding what the account potential is in those territories, and therefore what quotas should be and can be predicted to be, and being able to help sales leaders manage sellers in those territories and achieving those quotas. So that's these are early days, and we have to prioritize. But the focus today is really in the space, the middle of the three, the territory and quota management space.
That's a great perspective. So thinking about it in different categories, and again, in this SPM context, which I think is great, customers, territory, and then you had pipeline as the third segment. Now, that's one view of it. Joel, I'd love to get your perspective on that, kind of looking at, these different categories. What's your view on this?
I like to think of I like using frameworks that sort of take what AI does really well, and then I think about a particular domain. And there's a framework that I use, and it helps me sort of figure out what a business is trying to do better, what a sales leader is trying to do better. And I sort of have come to the conclusion that there are these four things that AI, predictive AI in particular, help us do better. If we can predict what's going to happen, one of the things we can do is just do a better job at planning. If I know how much each seller is going to sell, I can roll that up to a sales forecast, and that's great because all the things you can do with an accurate forecast. You can plan, you can budget, allocate capital, and so forth, all those things. So just simply being ready for what's going to happen, I find a very important, and I know others find a very important use case. One of the things you can do is not just plan, but actually create the right buckets. It's not just being ready for what's going to happen. You're selecting and putting individuals into the right categories. Territory optimization is all about this. If I can predict what's going to happen, like at the account level, then I can put the right accounts into the right territories in a maximally effective way. The other thing we can do is we can target. And when I say target, what that means is we don't just have to take a prediction and accept it and be like, okay, fine, that's great. We can actually say, hey, this person is at risk. This seller is at risk of not hitting quota. This customer is at risk of churning, whatever it is. And we can intervene selectively with those who we think might have suboptimal outcomes. So sometimes we just sort of let the predicted outcome happen and make sure we're ready for it. But targeting says we can change what's going to happen. So we got planning, we got selecting, we got targeting. And then the last one is what I call ideating. One of the really cool things that we can do with advanced analytics and AI models is we can find the factors that relate to the outcomes that we care about. And that's great because when we see what relates to the outcomes that we care about, we can start thinking about what we could do differently. Because of course we want to do more of what works and less of what doesn't. And those 4 points, those 4 ways of using prediction, advanced analytics, and AI, I think encapsulate a huge part of what we do. And I think it helps business leaders and sales leaders sort of connect what AI does well to exactly what their problems are and how to solve those problems.
Yeah, I love that perspective. And I think that's a good way of looking at it across your 4 buckets. You said planning, selecting, targeting, and ideating. And I think a lot of the use cases you mentioned, these are things that people are struggling with. And likely a lot of reviewers they're things they want to do and maybe just didn't even realize that it's possible to do today. So if we think about those categories, are there any specific examples maybe that you can share that cover some of these categories that you've talked about?
Yeah. So I'll give one. I'm sure Martin has some others, but one that jumps to mind is at Varicent, there's a customer of ours, a software company, and they had a pretty large pipeline of accounts and customers. And what they were trying to do is they were trying to allocate those accounts fairly and equitably to a decent sized sales force. But the problem is that they were allocating these customers and the sales force was kind of unhappy because it turned out that a lot of the accounts that they were saying were really good accounts, they weren't buying very much, they just weren't converting. They were just basically saying that there were all of these potential customers who were going to be really good, and then it turns out they weren't. And when you sort of unravel what they were doing, they were using a very sort of experience-based intuition way of assigning points on a rubric and using some firmographic information to say, oh, this company scores really highly on our rubric, this one really low, and so forth. That's not necessarily bad, although in this case, it didn't work that well because that scoring didn't really translate into good and bad customers. And so what we did with them was we said, okay, let's see if we could improve upon the experience and the intuition-based rubric, and let's throw it into an actual predictive algorithm. And the prediction got a lot better. Those that were predicted to actually be good customers were much more likely to actually be good customers. And when they reallocated accounts with the results of a predictive AI tool, turns out it was a lot more accurate. People were a lot happier because it was a much more equitable distribution of good accounts across the different sales folks.
Yeah, that's pretty amazing. Martin, what about you? Do you have any examples of different engagements that you've seen where we've been able to apply AI, in those categories?
I do. And it really builds on the thought that Joel has. We're talking about rules of thumb, the rubrics that Joel mentions. And there have to be millions and millions of rules of thumb that businesses, not only across the US, but around the world are using. And increasingly, those rules of thumb are being replaced by predictions from machine learning and artificial intelligence models. Because the problem is, in many organizations, these rules of thumb are put in place and they stay there for 10, 15 years. I mean, you'd think if you said that, you'd be crazy. But in fact, with business experience, you realize that organizations change only very slowly. So consequently, one of the interesting experiences that we've had is when you look in the consumer space. Now, Joel talked about the technology space with software. If we look in the consumer space where growth is at a much slower pace than in the technology industry. So consequently, certainly for publicly held firms, but even for privately held firms through private equity or even family-owned firms, there's much less margin of error in being able to achieve sales goals because growth is slower, and quotas and sales targets just have to be achieved. So consequently, when events occur, and we all know they do, stores close, stores open, there are wildfires, there are floods, and we're seeing increasing instances of these types of circumstances, then sellers' territories get changed because the store to which they might have been selling to on 1 month or 1 year is not around the next month or the next quarter or the next year. And so therefore, nobody's getting any relief from sales goals and sales quotas. So therefore, we have to move that quota somewhere else to be able to continue to maintain workable territories that allow sellers to easily go from one client to another and move from one sales opportunity to another sales opportunity, even when all of these events are occurring that are disrupting the normal flow of sales activity. So with the ability to be much more accurate in the use of predictive AI, we can do this in a very timely fashion, literally overnight. And consequently, sellers end up, through our experience, I would tell you, sellers end up spending less time bickering with their manager about the change in their quota and the change in who they're calling on, and more time focused on opportunities with their clients for merchandising, promotion, discovering new sales opportunities, and achieving much greater success because of the much more productive use of their sales time and much less focus on the administrative issues around territories and quotas and changes that are being forced by events in the outside world. So a very different experience from the software world that Joel was describing, but in the consumer space, some real challenges.
Yeah, that's pretty fascinating stuff. Thanks for sharing that. And it's good we had a good example, one talking about in technology space and one around consumers, because I'm pretty confident a lot of the sales professionals watching this video can relate to these customer stories or perhaps relate to some of the many use cases that we discussed throughout this short conversation. And here at Varicent, we're committed to helping our customers solve these complex types of sales challenges. And often it's easier than you think. And the fact is that a lot of these capabilities exist today. And really our mission when it comes down to it is to help organizations develop that sustainable revenue growth. And we have these solutions to help companies of all sizes build the right go-to-market strategy to help them, whether they're trying to forecast their comp spend more accurately, maybe they're trying to motivate their sellers or anything in between. And we have these AI capabilities across the platform to help organizations find and keep to that ideal path to revenue. So Martin and Joel, I'd like to thank you both for your time today. Really appreciate you sharing your knowledge and your insight. And for those who want to hear more about how AI can transform your sales performance management processes, please be sure to catch the other videos in our series.